Alright, so for this week's web lesson 3 for the ICP3, we were tasked with both building a responsive web page that incorporated Bootstrap and also building a basic rock, paper, scissors game that incorporated some JavaScript to serve up the logic and edit some of the HTML elements within the DOM. So I'll go through this wiki real quick and then run through some actual code and programs and show you how it's running. So I'll just hop right in. First, here's a quick screenshot of what my page looked like. The rock, paper, scissors page. When you first go there, it asks you to make your selection. You can choose rock, paper, scissors, or clear, and since you haven't made anything yet, the opponent hand and the result are both empty. For this next one, I did make a selection. I selected paper as my choice, and the opponent's hand turned out to be rock. Paper beats rock, so I won that. And my JavaScript, as I said, ran the logic to simulate the opponent's hand, which turned out to be rock, and I was given this message, you win. I played another game that ended up being a tie. I chose scissors, and the opponent hand ended up being scissors as well. So here is the it's a tie result. And lastly, you can just press the clear button and it'll clear the inner HTML text from both of these headers right here. So we can look at the code real quick just for a brief description here. This is my JavaScript for the rock, paper, scissors. I get buttons from the document, I get the opponent hand, and I get the result all from the document. And I have an array here for rock, paper, and scissors just to simulate what I choose and what the opponent's going to choose. And then I just have some basic win-loss tie messages here. Ultimately, I compare hands and run through each scenario for rock and return the tie, loss, or win result versus the component's hand. I do the same for paper and the same for scissors here. And lastly, sort of for the core functionality, I had to add an event listener to each of the buttons, the rock, paper, scissors, and clear buttons. And this waits for a click event, and I would notice that click event based on the inner HTML. So that being rock, paper, scissors, or clear. That's the inner HTML. In the case of rock, I set the player choice's hand to rock, and then I make the opponent choice's hand based off of a random number between 0 and 2 using this function here. And it selects a string from my rock, paper, scissors array as I showed up here. And after I do that, I will set the opponent hand dot inner HTML to equal the opponent's hand, which is this, and then I set the result to equal compare hands. Compare hands spits out a string, tie, loss, or win, which is the result right here. And I do that same thing for each of the cases, and in my default case, there's really nothing to do. There's no other options but for the players to select rock, paper, scissors. So, pretty basic page, but serves as a good introduction on how to tie JavaScript into your HTML pages and create a bit more functionality, alter your HTML on the fly, just make your web page look good and responsive. Moving forward from that, as our second part of the task, we were supposed to make a web page that looked like this mock-up here, which I'm sure you have seen. And, let me go back here. This is what mine ended up being like. We have my profile picture on the left. I got the closest font I could find over here, as well as my designation, what I am, a computer science at UMKC. We got a little border here, and then all these images are the appropriate sizes as was stated in the to-do in the code. It's got my featured work, and I've got a few images followed by the project titles and links in the GitHub to those actual projects. So, easiest thing, let's just run this code and I'll show you real quick how it works. Where are we at? Put it here. Alright, so this is in a full desktop view, my page. You can see I have 2 rows of 2 columns is how the web page chooses to display each of these projects here. And it is responsive. If I make this smaller to a certain point, it'll stack these into just one single column. And also you can go to the developer tools and mock up different devices here. So with the iPhone, everything is stacked but still looks in line and appropriate. With something like an iPad, a little bigger, everything still needed to be stacked since the images were pretty large. And then as I showed you earlier on the full desktop view, everything stacks in rows of 2. And each of these links do link to my GitHub projects that I'm referring to in my featured work. So yeah, that about covered it. This was a solid introduction into Bootstrap for someone that was not familiar with that, as well as JavaScript, incorporating both of those things into your pages. And I look forward to next week what we're going to learn.